Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's a pretty nice day out, and there's been some rain, but not right now. Thomas Jefferson reports that the temperature is 74 and that the humidity is 72, and the wind is 5 miles an hour, although I don't feel any of that, which usually happens when I'm standing in these trees. So what I want to do is to bear down on one of the several issues before us, pardons. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, devoted to the powers of the presidency, says the president shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons against the United States. Now, the president issued pardons the day after he took the oath of office to pardon crimes committed by those engaged in the insurrection on his behalf, at his behest, to make him president, though he lost the election to Biden in 2020. But this didn't matter to him. And as we all know, there were even suggestions that the Vice President, Pence, might find himself hanging had this whole thing not ended. Now, Trump issued a proclamation to go with this proposal, and that when he was granting these pardons, he's saying he was ending a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon American people over the last 4 years. Now, if this sounds familiar in the perfidy that is our president, it's because he doesn't change his approach. Let me explain. In 2020, he had legions of pliable lawyers who went out and claimed there was fraud in the election. Though no evidence was presented, no judge was persuaded, and there was no evidence of fraud that would justify any reconsideration of the vote, and particularly whether or not Trump was beaten out of his opportunity to be president by fraud. It was, if you will, a coup d'etat. Nothing less. But it failed. And America knows what has happened, and they've seen all the things that have happened since. That is to say, the charges against Trump, the hearings on the Hill, everything. So nothing was perpetrated on America. But it doesn't surprise us that he would say this, because the truth for him is merely an impediment to a story that advances his maniacal effort to have the power of a potentate. Now, who benefited from these lies and this traitorous conduct? Trump, of course. It was to his benefit and in his interest. Now, in recent days, he's issued another pardon because he received $1 million contribution at Mar-a-Lago and pardoned a criminal tax offender. I believe these pardons, most of the ones that involve the effort to take over the government in an insurrection, and this one involving basically a bribery, are fatally defective. And I'll tell you why I believe that. First of all, let me emphasize, Trump had an interest in the persons pardoned, as every person who pleaded guilty or was convicted was involved in helping Trump. It was to his interest, not theirs. It was to succeed at a coup. Now, there's a phrase that goes back to merry old England. Nemo iudex in sua causa. Now, my pronunciation is wrong. I blame all the Jesuits. But in English it says, no man should be a judge in his own case. Why? Because when exercising a power, you have to be impartial when exercising it. And some may disagree with this, but in order to get to a point where they may disagree, they have to consider Supreme Court authority, including Calder v. Bull, C-A-L-D-E-R. It was considered a principle of natural law that the decisions had to be impartial. Now some may say, yeah, but Trump has immunity. But this is not about Trump. It's about a power he exercises to benefit someone else and in the bargain to benefit himself. And I say that falls before this long-standing rule of law that you cannot be a judge basically in your own case. So Trump's pardons, maybe all of them, but many of them certainly, involving the insurrection, are invalid by this thinking. And the one in which there's a bribery, that one, again, some may say, well, yeah, but he can't be prosecuted because the Supreme Court made this ridiculous decision that he's immune. Okay, they said, I'll take them at their word, or what you believe to be their word, that he was immune from prosecution for bribery, okay? But his pardon is defective because he, as the author of the pardon, has an interest in it. He received funds for it. Now here's something else that we should keep in mind, although the numbers are not right on the Hill. But while he may be immune from prosecution for bribery, he is subject to a different power, which is not criminal, and it is to remove him from office. And the law is clear that you can't pardon an impeachment. So he could be prosecuted for impeachment if it wasn't a numbers game on the Hill to stand by my man, meaning to stand by Trump in his criminality, in his excesses, in his false pardons. So the courts should be considering something they're already doing. They're presently considering the bad acts of those convicted in connection with the insurrection. How extensive is it that they are pardoned for other crimes not having to do with the insurrection? And there are several opinions by judges that say, no, it doesn't affect those. You can be prosecuted for that. I'm proposing a different leap. My leap is no pardon is defective in which Trump has an interest in the outcome. And he's not pardoning himself. And I think for the same reason, that would be fatally defective. But he is pardoning people to reward them for the benefit of future support, really, and insulation on grounds more than immunity from prosecution. So that's my thought on this subject. Others may have said it. I haven't read it. And my dad always said, he was a carpenter, electrician, and a plumber. He said, a poor workman blames his tools. One of the sad elements of the history of Trump rearranging our nation in terms of its rights, its purpose, its justice, has succeeded because too many do nothing. They don't use the tools they have. We have a tool here, and it's the court. And if carefully selected by any number of groups competent to make the argument, we should be making the argument that those pardons are fatally defective and can't stand because they were granted by a man, Trump, who had an interest in the outcome. So that's what I have today. Maybe tomorrow I'll have more of a laundry list. And I have one now, but I wanted to make this point because as many other things are going on, and Trump is not having a good day today. And I think that's why he's talking about pardons, by the way, to have everybody watch those bright, shiny objects while courts are saying, hey, you can't do this with tariffs, and setting Trump back, and another court saying, you can't do this to Harvard. But those are subjects I'm sure we'll have in the days ahead, and I'll talk about them. So I wish you a happy evening, in which I'm able to get out, and I hope you are too. And I'll talk to you more from the Cathedral of Trees. Bye-bye.